Design Notes is a show from Google Design about creative work and what it teaches us. I'm your host, Liam Spradlin. Each episode, we talk with people from unique creative fields to discover what inspires and unites us in our practice. In this episode, I spoke with Bee Grandinetti and Hedvig Ahlberg, two-thirds of the trio that founded Punanimation, a community and platform for women, trans, and non-binary folks working in animation and motion design. In the interview, we talked about how Panimation got started.
It was just the three of us, and we were like, oh, let's start trying to connect more women that we know that do animation and have like a space that we can debate, ask questions, encourage each other. And that space started to just grow super organically.
And how animation is informed by the music and motion of the world around us.
I see a lot of similarities in the way of timings and the musicality of it. I sometimes compare it a bit to dancing. I don't know how many times when we used to live together, we used to like open doors and like, can you record me when I'm walking or like jumping? Because just to understand the rhythm of like a body or how objects move and shapes.
Bee, Hedvig, welcome to Design Notes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So to get started, just by way of introduction, I'm interested to hear about each of your journeys, coming to motion design, meeting one another, and also forming Panimation. And Hedvig, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So I think ever since I graduated high school, I was sure I wanted to work with moving images somehow. So I studied a bit of like loose courses, like media, interactive media, a bit of coding, a bit of everything. And then I just found out about Hyper Island in Stockholm. And I saw that they had a motion graphics course, which I had no idea what it was. So I just started Google and look into what motion graphics was, basically. And I just started up Flash and animated a really crappy video. And that was my application. But somehow I got in. Then I just fell in love with motion design and editing and all kind of filmmaking, basically.
So I grew up in Brazil. And, in my hometown, Belo Horizonte, and that's where I studied design. I originally studied graphic design for 4 years, graduated in graphic design, was working with graphic design for a little while. A year and a half, I moved to São Paulo, was working with graphic design there, and then I always had this thing with moving images, but I never gave it a proper chance. And that's when I decided to drop everything in São Paulo and move to Stockholm. And went to Hyper Island as well to study motion graphics. And that's where I met Hedvig.
And then the magic happened.
Yes. Yeah, and then we had an amazing year at Hyper, became really good friends. And then at Hyper, you have this moment during your education that you're supposed to find an internship. And I ended up having my first internship in Stockholm. And then Hedvig and a couple of other friends from our class, they came to London for their internships. And my second internship was also in London. And then I came over, I met them, we started living together. And it was, super fun time. And I remember that, I think it was like at one point, very quickly, when we were studying, we realized that everything was very heavily male-dominated. Even though like our class was 50-50, or like it was a good ratio of men and women. I personally started to realize, and maybe from 100 videos that I would like on Vimeo, maybe 5 were made by women or had women as directors. I think I remember like one day we were at home and I was like, oh, Hedvig, wouldn't it be fun if we just grab like a bunch of GIFs made by girls and put it in a Tumblr or, start collecting it. And then I think we had something in our Hyper class that everyone just used for some reason, like the slang punani, which means, is the word for ladies part in Hawaiian. And it's just like, oh yeah, Hedvig was like, oh, we should call it Punanimation, just taking a piss out of it. And then we met Lynn, who was also a good Swede, came to London for a job as a junior animator. She shared the same opinions and a lot of the same frustrations we had. And I think when the three of us became really good friends in London, all going through the same things in, early in our careers and sharing the same frustrations, we just started to shape it up to what it is today. Like first we started with a Facebook group that, it was just the three of us and we were like, oh, let's start, trying to connect more women that we know that do animation. and have like a space that we can debate, that we can ask questions, that we can encourage each other. And that space started to just grow super organically. Like our friends started inviting their friends. And yeah, and then it grew to be like today we have over 3,000 members on the Facebook group from all over the world. And yeah, things just escalated from there really. But it was like, it started with the three of us on a Facebook group, and then it just built up like super organically.
Yeah. And why we became friends was, I think, from the beginning, we shared a lot of core values. I remember watching your grad film from graphic design.
So shady.
But I remember, was it about the female orgasm?
It was like, yeah, so back then when I graduated in graphic design, I made this insane 6-minute video, which is, absolutely poorly animated.
But it was so good.
But so bad. But it was like a 6-minute video about sexual taboos for girls, just debating, like, I think it was about masturbation and orgasm and faking orgasm. So it was about those things, basically, and using motion to talk about those issues. And I think I showed that to you. Yeah, and that's when we started our little feminist bond.
Yeah, definitely. I remember I have such a vivid memory of that moment. I was like, this woman is perfect.
Oh my God. Fangirly.
Fangirly. Definitely. I think that's sort of what sparked a lot of the core values for Punanimation as well, because we shared the same sort of worldview and we had such a strong will to change as well. And that's what we channeled then and actioned with Punanimation.
So it sounds like there's this aspect to Punanimation, which is forming a collective for animators, but also actually affecting change in the industry beyond just highlighting individuals. What are some of the more tactical things that Punanimation is doing or has been working on to address the lack of women and non-binary folks in the industry?
You can split up Punanimation into different parts. It's the support part, the community, the Facebook group, etc., where we want people to feel a lot more confident about their work. We want them to share and to feedback on each other, to collaborate, to basically give a lot more confidence to women, trans and non-binary folks. And then we have the promotion part, which is the Instagram account and our Vimeo, where we try to feature content from more diverse talent that you wouldn't see in your normal feed, for example. So I think this is our two main parts of affecting the industry and creating a change.
We see like there's not a single simple answer to why there is this gap of having loads of girls in universities and schools, but then when it comes to the actual industry, there's barely any girls doing animation and motion or having higher roles as creative directors or directors. I think like first the group came up as this space that you could feel more confident and comfortable with, sharing your struggles, sharing your work, and just building up the confidence, basically. And then as the group grew bigger, last year, like we had such a good momentum in the group and it was like self-perpetuating, like people were posting every day and encouraging each other and being so committed to the group. They were like, well, we need to take advantage that this is such a good momentum and we need to start doing more stuff. So it was this year at Women's Day that we released first directory. So we finally released Punanimation.com, which is a directory that you can easily research women, trans, and non-binary people working with animation and motion graphics. And you can filter them by the city that they live in. You can filter them by the skills set, like stop motion, 2D animation, and, all the disciplines within 2D. Maybe it's character animation, maybe it's more UX, UI, 3D. And you can also filter them by the software, because we know that a lot of the times when producers are looking for people that do animation, they need people that do specifically like Flash or After Effects and all of that. Because a lot of the times people, they have the will to change. They know, oh yeah, there's not that many women, but I don't have the time to look for them, or I don't have the resources. Like, where can I find these women?
Basically, we wanted to just create an answer to the question that we all heard, but where's all the women? Here you go. Yeah. Here are the women.
I want to go back to the directory for a second, because if you go to punanimation.com, you'll see a page of animation samples from all of the folks that are part of Punanimation. And there's like a very clear motif and palette and everything that aligns with the Panimation identity. I'm really curious what the brief is like or what you ask for from motion designers to get those.
So it's literally like we give them a color palette, which is the colors that we've been using since the beginning. And the brief is just like have allusion to a triangle in the middle. It's important to say as well, because I think it's a part of our story and how we grew. It was 3 years ago when we started, so 2015. In the beginning, like the group was very focused on, bringing women together. The three of us, we are like all cis women. And we just wanted to bring together people that were like us. And as the group started to grow bigger and bigger, we're like, well, maybe, let's open the party a bit more, because we're very aware that the industry is very non-diverse, not only when it comes to women. There is barely any people of color and, more queer people and gay people. It's basically straight, white, cis men. And as we grow older, we also hopefully become better people. Or at least we work hard on trying to become better people. And we were like, well, why might we not just open to as well like trans and non-binary people? And we've been trying to make, arrangements to make them feel welcomed as well. But we are aware, for example, that, there's barely enough trans and non-binary people as well. But it's just trying to make room, and hopefully they will come as well as they feel more comfortable.
And we're aware that our logo implies a vagina.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the thing, in the beginning, the whole thing was all girl power movement, and that's why the triangle is an allusion to the punani. But things has been slowly adjusting to try to be a bit more welcoming to other people as well, other minorities in our industry as well.
I kind of want to dig into the motif of the animation samples a little bit further as well, because there's something I'm curious about in just the discipline of motion design, which is kind of, I guess, portraying a certain style as a motion designer. When you're dealing with one animation sample, obviously you have to choose a style to kind of represent your work, but I think it's often the case that motion designers have many different styles that they're able to embody in their work. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that generally, and how you've managed that in your own experiences.
First of all, I struggle with the world having a style, because I think that puts so much pressure on people, especially when you study, etc., to find like your own style. Like that's something I think just comes with time. That's just something you develop after like working and just doing stuff basically. And I think sometimes it's just random, really. It's just something that happens and you can't really control it. But yeah, I think B is more fit to answer this, since you do a lot of different
Yeah, I see a lot of directors, for example, that they have this recipe of they find a style that they're comfortable with, and also people seem to like them. Seems to be, successful not only with, with the crowds, and also, give them money. And I see a lot of people attaching themselves to like one single style and bringing it to exhaustion, like even, the same color palette. And it works. I personally get insanely bored if I work on always, things are always looking the same, or, if I'm doing too much like vector stuff. I'm personally like, I'm sick of vectors for a couple of years now. That's why, it's very down on my portfolio, because I've been thinking more, I don't know, organic and shapes and textures more lately. But I try to do a couple of different things and explore like the things that I'm at the time more interested in. Maybe I have a couple of references in mind, like, oh yeah, I saw that yesterday and it looks cool. And then I combine them and I'm like, oh, I should experiment with bigger hands now. And just try to navigate within those things. But I think it's personal. Like, some people, they really nail one thing that is very unique. No one else has done it. And maybe they want to stick to their guns and just do that extensively until they can get jobs in that style. But I think it's personal, like what you feel comfortable with. I definitely don't feel comfortable doing the same thing to exhaustion. I need change, and I need change to get excited about whatever it is that I'm doing.
I guess it also comes down to if you illustrate and animate, or if you just animate, if you're just like jobbing crew as an animator or motion designer, because then I guess you tend to do a lot of different styles because you work for an art director or a director that has a specific way of thinking. So I guess that also depends on what you're used to like what kind of setting you're used to work in.
I guess I would ask if there are other changes that you've seen in the industry over time, not just in perhaps what people are doing, but maybe even the work that's being produced or the trends that are emerging like as these changes take place.
One thing that I noticed myself in my own behavior was that 3 years ago, if you would ask me like, "Oh, do you know any girls doing motion?" Or, who are your role models and stuff? I would be like, I don't know, maybe I could list you like 3 girls that I knew that were doing kick-ass stuff. Maybe they existed, but I just didn't know of them. And, these days, I'm always recommending people that I met through Punanimation whenever I can get a freelance job. I'm like, oh, but you should reach out to this, and that. And there's like a full list. If people ask me like, oh, can you recommend me someone to speak at this conference? Like, we need more girls and any talented people. And I was like, well, here's a bunch, I know who to send these people to. And it's not only for the sake of like, oh, they need to have a more diverse kind of lineup. I fully trust that these people are insanely talented and more than capable of doing it. It's not only that I know the names, but I also know that they are more than capable of being where they are. It's been really nice to sit down and realize that I've changed my behaviors and my perception, and that I know way more than I knew 3 years back, I could list on like a handful of people that I knew.
I guess I would ask then also, what are the changes that you would still like to see besides just more forward progress?
You know what? I think like what I would love to see, because I was working in a big studio here in London and it has a couple of floors. And then the first floor, which is production, it was literally just girls. Maybe 2 guys, but just girls. And then I was working on the upper floors, which was animators and creatives and stuff. And it's me and a bunch of dudes. And also, yeah, they had one black guy amongst the creatives. So everyone was white as well. So I think like ideal scenario, I would go in a big studio like that. And, production, you see this big diverse range of people and all floors, you wouldn't know which floor is what. This floor could easily be production. That floor could be, the creative part of it. And I think that would be a really happy scenario.
So there was a study done a couple of years ago that was called the Great British Diversity Experiment, where they got together a bunch of different people. They tried to create as diverse teams as possible in terms of gender, in terms of bringing a lot more people with disabilities, people of color into the teams, to just try to make as mixed teams as possible. And then they just created all this data based on the creative solutions they come up with. And it turned out so good, apparently. I think they said that the more different people you have in a room, the more different ideas you will have. And by that, I guess the more creative ideas you will have.
Because innovation,
Yeah.
I think the quote was like, innovation comes from unconnected ideas. And in a room full of, people who are diverse and come from completely different backgrounds, is way more likely for you to have different ideas that haven't been connected before than in a room where, everyone is kind of the same and has the same background. So that's why it's so important to have, a diverse team, especially when working with creative stuff or when working with communication. I guess that's the biggest one, because how can you communicate with a diverse audience if your team is not diverse?
Definitely.
Right. Obviously, the people who are in leadership positions now would have the power to make this change. But what about just practicing motion designers in the world? What are some steps that maybe they could take?
I think like the very first thing, because especially when we are in a position of privilege, it's hard to be aware of your own privilege. Until it bugs us, until we're feeling misplaced, we're not really maybe aware of our environment. And I think the first thing is just to turn your radar on and start being a little bit aware. Just to like start in a healthy way to question yourself. You step in a new room, like, oh, what is this room? How many guys are there? Like, oh, how many girls and how many people of color? Like, how many immigrants? Which roles are they in? Who is in the power positions? When we go out for lunches, do we invite everyone in the room, or are we excluding anyone in the room? And once you turn your radar on, magical things happen. I think you start to do 1 + 1 and you start to realize a couple of things. If you feel that someone is not being comfortable, can you make that person's life easier? Especially if you're in a situation of power that maybe you feel comfortable. So maybe you can make that person's life a bit easier and invite that person over for lunch, or, ask, oh, what do you think about this? And Just pay attention to the day-to-day dynamics that happen inside your studio, even on the tiny things, like who is making coffee? Is there someone that is feeling that she has to go around and make coffee and become the mama of the studio for some reason? It's on the tiny things as well. Like, is on the meetings, is there someone running over someone else? Is someone that is always silent, where someone else is taking the stage for himself? And especially like when you're in a situation that you feel you have the authority and the power to intervene, do intervene and try to make it easier for the people who maybe are not having things as easy as you are.
Definitely, and become allies with the people that needs it. Like create a little subgroup with people that need that extra support, etc. I think that's so important. If you're in that position that you can employ people and you're writing job ads, try to write it in a way so that the bigger group of people find it fun and interesting to apply for your job, rather than we're a cool studio, we love to play ping pong and drink beer. Because I don't think that many women would feel like that's a place they want to be at, you know what I mean? And then you miss out so much talent. So I just feel like take the responsibility and look into like how you can make your studio, your workspace, your collective, whatever, a bit more diverse, but how you put out ads, like how you talk to people.
I do want to move briefly into the motion design practice generally. There might be listeners out there who are wondering what motion design is like as a practice. So I guess I would just start by asking, what is the starting point for a motion design project?
It all starts with an idea.
I mean, motion design is a funny one, right? Because it's a very weird hybrid where design meets animation. And by the end of the day, it's all animation. But it's this little thing that people are scared of calling it animation, because when you say animation, people think like Pixar and characters and, traditional frame-by-frame animation. Whereas motion is where people feel comfortable naming when it's like more abstract shapes or the smaller formats, like the more commercial things and music videos or After Effects stuff. But as Hedvig said, it all starts with an idea and a strong concept. And it's the same with design, Good design meets good storytelling. And then it meets sense of rhythm and movement and animation and all of that to tell the story. It's very easy to differentiate, because a lot of the times you see a video that is like absolutely gorgeous and it moves amazing, but you're going to forget it in 1 week because you see it and it's like it blows your mind because it's gorgeous, but you have no clue by the end of it what the video was about. Right. Have you had that experience, like watching something on Vimeo, you're like, oh, this was amazing, what was it about?
Yeah, exactly.
And like I find this all the time, like you're gonna forget these videos unless the visuals were super innovative or something. You're gonna forget about those videos so easily because being pretty and moving sexy can only get you so far. By the end of the day, it's about the substance. Like if you see a video that has amazing, mind-blowing concepts and content, and maybe, design is okay and movement was okay, you're gonna remember it because you're gonna remember how it made you feel. You're going to remember the message that it gave you. That's the strongest point. All good design starts with good ideas and good concept and a strong message and something that actually touches people on the specific little knob and turns that little knob.
Stop saying little knob.
I don't know. Yeah, is that sexual?
No. Sorry, it's just my weird humor. I think also when designing for animation or starting out with animation motion graphics project, you also have movement in your head, which is different from when you're designing something still, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to compare both because it feels like the animation is the magical side of things, like you're making it move. And I always find like interesting to compare both because I think like graphic design is more quickly rewarding. You start putting something together and you're like, oh, this is shit. But then like after a couple of minutes, you're like, oh, no, it's getting better and better. And then you start to feel happy about yourself and like, oh, I've done something pretty. It's nice. And then you print it and it's like, oh, nice. Whereas with animation, it looks horrible for such a long time until it starts looking good. The reward is so slow. You really have to be like a patient person to work with animation because otherwise it just doesn't work. But once you get there, the reward is way bigger as well, I feel. It's like, I made it move. It's like, you feel like you have a superpower almost, like it's the most rewarding thing when you feel like, yeah, it's moving. Because it's almost like you're giving life to something. So it's fun.
And that underscores the importance of having a really strong substantive concept, I guess, because if you don't have that underlying vision, you might get impatient and give up before you get to the point where it gets good.
Yes,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I also want to ask about the components of motion design. I'm always interested to hear about what tools are at our disposal in different design practices. So what are some of the things unique to motion design that help you express that idea as you're working on it?
I think definitely timing, because I do a lot of live action editing as well. And at the moment, I'm actually directing my first short film soon ish. But yeah, so I do a lot of live action editing, and I see a lot of similarities in the way of timings and the musicality of it, if that makes sense. I sometimes compare it a bit to dancing because I have a background in dancing. I used to dance a lot when I was younger. And I think I benefit a lot from it, especially in editing, because you get a flow and a rhythm to everything. And I think it's the same with motion design. I mean, I don't know how many times when we used to live together, we used to like open doors and like, can you record me when I'm walking or like jumping? Because just to understand the rhythm of like a body or how objects move and shapes. So you get that understanding. I'm sounding like such a hippie, but to just like understand timings and rhythm of things and objects, but also an edit or a cut, if that makes sense.
I think like it is very, very musical. And it was funny though, like I don't know if you remember Hedvig, but in our class, a huge chunk of our class had some sort of connection to rhythm. Like some people, maybe they were really good musicians, some people were dancers. And I feel that all of that, feedbacks in my work so much because I play a couple of instruments very poorly, all of them very bad. But I do have a little bit of fun playing stuff. And all of that feeds into my sense of rhythm and anticipation and building tension. And I also done my share of dancing classes when I was a kid. I think that all of this is super connected. I think my design knowledge feeds into the way that I move my objects on a scene because the layout of how you design something, also like all of this like sense of rhythm and building anticipation and where to have the focus of the animation, where you're going to lead the eye of whoever is watching your video. That's why motion design is such a fun thing because it's such a combination of things, of different disciplines. For example, like personally, I've been getting more and more into character animation lately. And I've been really, really wanting to take some acting classes just because I think whenever I'm animating a character, I already do, the acting myself because I think it's so important to feel on your body first. So you can understand the movement, like what's moving first on your body, and you can do it afterwards. And I think, if I really study a little bit of acting and body language, all of that knowledge just feedbacks into the work that you do so much.
Speaking of character animation, I'm curious about the ways in which things like characters are designed for motion. Is there something about the process of designing something for motion where you're building in that capability? Are there characteristics of the character where you've planned to allow it to move? And if so, what are those?
There's some stuff on like posing, and how you design it is like you want to find good readable silhouettes, like strong poses. You see a character, you understand the intent, or you communicate something with it. And depending on the project, if you have a very short deadline and you're going to negotiate with the client like, hey, this is the design that we have to go because this is going to be more doable animation wise according to the schedule that we have. But a lot of those amazing projects that we see, super innovative animation wise, is when people design them not necessarily knowing how they were going to animate it afterwards. So like they design it first to the maximum awesomeness that you can be, and then afterwards they're like, oh shit, how are we going to animate this? And then they figure out along the way, because a lot of animation is also problem solving and figuring out like, oh, okay, maybe if I animate the hand in Flash or Photoshop, but then the body can be in After Effects, and you start to connect those things. yeah, so I guess there's these two scenarios, like one scenario that you have to be very optimal and build your character in a way that is doable to animate within a certain deadline. Or there's this fun way that you just design something that you're really happy with. And then afterwards you set this trap for yourself of, okay, how do I animate this?
Also on character design, tying it back to Punanimation and creating a more diverse industry, that's also something motion designers and designers can have in mind when designing characters, to design them with like a diverse mindset, to think about having a broad range of different characters when it comes to skin color or body shapes, gender, etc., etc. Because obviously, once again, it's about communication, right? So the people you communicate to want to be represented in your animations and your designs. So I think that's also something that's really good to keep in mind when designing.
I think we have such a massive responsibility, like people who do character design, because, we're communicating things, and is that old, you cannot be what you cannot see. And, whenever the client challenges you, you challenge him back, oh, why can it be this way? What's the problem about it? And a lot of the times you'll find that picking the fight is most of the times going to be more successful than not. It's just going to make your client think, and yeah, why can't it be this way? And by the end of the day, it's sending out more diverse, encouraging messages.
Inclusive, yeah.
Inclusive and encouraging, yes, definitely.
And maybe if you do have to pick that fight, then at the very least, you've gotten them to the step one of just being aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
definitely.
Nice. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you again, Bee and Hedvig, for joining me.
Thank you.
Subscribe to Design Notes so you don't miss our next episode with New York-based type designer Ksenia Samarskaya. You can subscribe on Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.